Mike Baker, former CIA operative, it's bigger than Brennan.
Yeah, this question of the clearances, it is bigger than Brennan. If the administration was smart, and I think they would point out to the fact that there are 4.2 million people out there with security clearances. 1.3 or so of those million are top secret clearances. What they should be doing is looking at this situation. It's run amok. It's a cottage industry. Anybody who leaves a position of authority with responsibility for classified information should lose their clearances. If you want to get them back and you go into the commercial sector, that company can sponsor you. And if you need to go in and talk to somebody in a position of leadership, fine. But
reform needed all the way around. Yeah. Mike, thanks so much. Sure. Shannon Bream is next with a phenomenal show with all this breaking news. I can't wait to watch when I get home. Shannon Bream, you're on my DVR. Shannon.
Excellent, Laura. That's right where we like to be. Thank you so much. We begin with a Fox News alert. Under American pressure, North Korea appears to be dismantling a key missile launch station. As the president also gets tough with Iran, will that hard line bear fruit as well? Or are the Ayatollahs a completely different kind of foe? General Jack Keane on the president's foreign policy negotiations. And defying GOP leadership, Freedom Caucus Republicans may go their own way and launch a last-ditch attempt to punish Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Congressman Andy Biggs tells us what to expect. And the clock is ticking on a midnight deadline in Portland where anti-ICE protesters have been given eviction notices as the Abolish ICE movement hits a new low with a makeshift anti-Trump guillotine. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. It's being called an important first step towards fulfilling a commitment made by Kim Jong-un at the June 12th Singapore summit. New commercial satellite imagery of North Korea's main launch facility since 2012 indicates that the North has begun dismantling key operations. President Trump says he appreciates that. Meanwhile, the president also says he's open to a new, quote, real deal with Iran. Kristen Fisher is tracking the president's latest foreign policy moves. Good evening, Kristen.
Good evening, Shannon. Yeah, just 2 days after threatening Iran with that all-caps tweet and just 2 months after pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, President Trump now says he's ready to make a new deal with Tehran.
The Trump administration is on the attack. National Security Advisor John Bolton said if Iran does anything wrong, it will pay a price like few countries have ever paid before. The Secretary of State accused the Supreme Leader of profiting from a $95 billion hedge fund, and President Trump took on his Iranian counterpart in a tweet heard round the world. To Iranian President Rouhani, never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences, the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. When asked today if Mr. Trump risked inciting war with Iran, the White House press secretary said,
"If anybody is inciting anything, I'll look no further than to Iran."
What seemingly set the president off were these remarks about the U.S. plan to snap back sanctions on Iran's oil empire.
Do not play with the lion's tail, or else you will regret it. It will bring you eternal regret.
Democrats and some Republicans argue it's all a distraction to move our eyes away from Russia.
The speech that Rouhani gave seemed to be the same speech that they always give, So I don't know what in particular provoked this kind of response.
But behind the scenes, the Trump administration has been working for some time to erode support for Iran's leaders. That includes launching a new media outlet to try to help Iranians get around internet censorship.
It will span not only television, but radio, digital, and social media format, so that the ordinary Iranians inside of Iran and around the globe can know that America stands with them.
And back to some of these agreements with, or potential agreements with North Korea, one of the things to be watching for a little bit later this week is the possibility that some of the remains of fallen servicemen and women from back in the Korean War, there is a possibility that their remains could be coming back to the United States as early as Friday. And that date, Shannon, very important because this Friday is the anniversary of the signing of the armistice that ended the Korean War. Shannon.
Very significant. All right, Kristen Fisher, thank you very much. Well, the Associated Press defining the Trump doctrine as, quote, claiming matchless strength, suffer no slights, and counterpunch harder than you are hit. So is it working with North Korea? Will it work with Iran? Fox News senior strategic military analyst General Jack Keane joins us now live to discuss that. Great to have you with us, General.
Good to be here.
Okay, so on these satellite imagery photos of North Korea dismantling one side in particular, the New York Times actually called it an encouraging sign for people who want the president to succeed here, but added this: many analysts say North Korea will not have started denuclearizing until it begins dismantling its nuclear nuclear weapons. North Korea has not started disposing of its fissile materials or nuclear facilities. It's basically being couched as a good first step, but a long way to go.
Yeah, they've taken down a nuclear test facility. We saw them blow that up. They possibly could reconstitute that if they wanted to. This is a rocket test site and a missile test site, but particularly for rockets. And it deals with liquid fuel. The most advanced rockets and missiles they have are solid fuel. And you don't have to put it on a launch pad and prepare it so it doesn't have a signature. So, yes, this is a step in the right direction. I totally agree. We should be encouraged by it. It's something Secretary Pompeo negotiated with. I'm sure President Trump reinforced it at the summit that he had. But it's not denuclearization. And you mentioned that in your introduction. I think they have to get, I'm not certain they even know from the North Koreans the identity and location of all of their sites yet. And then we would want to go out and verify that. We have some information on that ourselves, obviously, in intelligence services. And I think another thing that's happening here, I believe the administration is making an adjustment. And here's the adjustment they're making. I think they really wanted to get this all done in a couple of years before the end of the Trump's first term of office. The North Koreans are not moving on that time schedule, and I think we have adjusted somewhat to the North Koreans. The North Koreans want to go slow. They want to build up trust. They want to have a relationship. They could be gaming us. At the end of the day, we get nothing anyway. But I think we've made that adjustment to that schedule. We'll see what the next step is. It may be to repatriate the remains, but really what we're really looking for, obviously, is disarming and dismantling nuclear capability.
And the tough thing about this is that idea of being able to inspect the sites or have any real verification process, and it's something that's been such a critique of the Iran deal. The president today talking about what he now wants to happen with Iran after this back and forth on Twitter this weekend.
But we're ready to make a real deal, not the deal that was done by the previous administration, which was a disaster.
So he says he wants a real deal. Now, interestingly, in a piece Edward Morrissey wrote in The Week, he talked about the fact that these are two very different regimes we're dealing with. He says the Kim regime in North Korea is brutal and erratic, but it has one primary rational goal: survival. Now, the Shiite extremists in charge of Iran at least publicly subscribe to an apocalyptic vision about a 12th Imam of Islam. Iran might choose war over negotiation on the basis of theocratic supremacy. North Korea wants to survive. Kim wants to survive. In many ways, there are people within Iran who want to provoke what they see as the apocalypse.
I'm not sure of that. I think the mullahs at the end of the day are largely thugs and killers. They're committed to a political ideology, to be sure. They camouflage it in a religion. They're ambitious, and they have been successful. 38 years they've been in power. And frankly, no Republican or Democratic president has ever truly pushed back on them in any consequential way in those 38 years. Why? Because they've always used proxies to carry out their dirty work, and that paralyzed decision makers. It gives you a reason not to have to act because they're not using their forces directly. So they own Lebanon, they about own Syria, they have undue influence in Iraq, and they started another civil war in Yemen, all to dominate and control the Middle East. All that said, this president has taken Iran on in a way that no other president has. Critics don't give him any credit for it, but the fact is they have. And I do believe that with the sanctions that are come next month, the primary sanctions, and 3 months later, the secondary sanctions, as a result of pulling out of the nuclear deal, given the fact that Iran's economy is already struggling, the currency is in a tank, they're overstretched in those 4 countries I just mentioned to you, and the population is restless because of the pressure that is being put on them economically. And I think they are ripe to come back to the table and work out some kind of negotiated deal.
Well, interesting to see Secretary Pompeo speaking directly to the Iranian people in his speech this weekend. There are 2 different factions we're talking about there, the leaders you refer to and the people who may want something entirely different. General, great to have your expertise with us.
Good talking to you, Shannon.
All right, CNN tonight playing what it calls secret recordings between then-candidate Donald Trump and his then-attorney, Michael Cohen. The tapes were provided by Cohen's now lawyer, Lanny Davis, long known for his ties to the Clintons. Well, Rudy Giuliani, also an attorney for the president, already reacting, saying the recording actually vindicates, he says, the president. Trace Gallagher tracks what we know so far. Good evening, Trace.
Good evening, Shannon. You mentioned the Lanny Davis connection. He was the one who provided the tape to CNN. The recording is from September of 2016 between Cohen and then presidential candidate Donald Trump, where the two men are reportedly discussing buying the rights to the story of an alleged affair years earlier between Playboy model Karen McDougal and Trump. In the recording, Cohen says he needs to open up a company for the transfer of all that information regarding our friend David, which is likely a reference to David Pecker, the head of American Media, which owns the National Enquirer. Listen closely because the tape is muddled, but here's part of it. Play this.
What financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
I'll pay the kid.
No. No.
Yeah, you hear it's very muddled, and it's unclear if the president is saying they should or should not pay with cash. Of course, the president's team says he's saying don't pay with cash. In fact, Rudy Giuliani had insisted that Michael Cohen was suggesting to pay in cash. Here's what Giuliani said just a short time ago.
And the transcript makes it quite clear at the end that President Trump says, quote, don't pay with cash. Cohen then interrupts and says, no, I got it. And then you hear distinctly, if you're careful and you slow it down, check. And then Cohen follows with no, and then quickly cuts off the tape.
Yeah, bottom line, Giuliani is maintaining that Mr. Trump was trying to keep this whole thing on the up and up. Lanny Davis, who again provided the tape to CNN, seemed to be amused by Giuliani's statement, saying the truth is on Michael Cohen's side and that only drug dealers and mobsters pay with cash. Though tonight, Alan Dershowitz told Laura Ingraham that regardless of what was said on the tape, there is nothing nefarious here. Watch him.
The big picture is, A, there's nothing on the tape that suggests any kind of a crime. B, what is strongly suggested by the prior interview by Lanny Davis is that Cohen has made his decision. He's going to cooperate with the prosecutors. He's going to flip. He's going to try to get immunity, and he's going to testify against Donald Trump. Whether he has anything to say that's incriminating is a real question.
Yeah, the lawyer for the Trump organization also denied that Trump was offering to pay cash, saying there was no transaction, saying any payment to a large company like American Media would be accompanied by a lot of paperwork, including an agreement of sale, which has not been produced. Shannon.
All right, Trace Gallagher with the very latest. Thank you. And fresh on the heels of the revelations from the FISA court and the warrants involving former Trump advisor Carter Page, House conservatives reportedly considering forcing, even without Speaker Paul Ryan's blessing, a contempt of Congress vote. The target, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Arizona Republican Congressman Andy Biggs is a member of the House Freedom Caucus, joins us live. Good to have you with us, sir.
Good to be with you, Shannon.
Okay, so let's talk about this. The Deputy Attorney General has already addressed whether or not he thinks that he's in any danger of contempt. Here's what he said at a hearing last month.
I'm working with a really superb team, some of the best lawyers in the country, Republicans, Democrats, career, political appointees. We are not in contempt of this Congress, and we are not going to be in contempt of this Congress.
He is not worried. This is something that leadership, it doesn't sound like they're signing on to. So what's the goal here?
Well, I mean, the reality is he's not worried because we've done nothing. I mean, he's extended every deadline. He's slow-walked things. We've got documents we requested a year ago. We've received documents that are so heavily redacted that to make them unintelligible. And so why would he think he's in contempt? Because we're the ones that have been held in contempt by him. And so I think at some point you have to protect the institution. You have to say Congress has got an oversight responsibility, and maybe we ought to exercise that. So one of the things we could do is we could actually hold him in contempt, or we could actually move on and say maybe you should be impeached, maybe you shouldn't be in office any further.
Well, there's going to be a meeting tomorrow. My understanding, 6 GOP lawmakers will go over and meet with folks from the DOJ. There's going to be a discussion about turning over more documents and things. Do you think there'll be progress there? Because the Speaker has indicated he seems to think that there are things that are coming along.
Well, I mean, there may be progress, but what's progress when you should have had these documents to us 7 months ago, and you're going to slow walk them over to us some more? What does it mean? We still haven't seen the scope letter when it's in an unredacted form. So there's so much information that's been withheld, and almost every time we have a hearing, I happen to be at the hearing that Rosenstein said, you know, I'm in good shape here. Every time we have a hearing, it's like we find out something more, and it's like, Where did that come from? How come we're just finding out now?
Do you feel like there are times that you don't know what you don't know, and that prohibits your ability to ask for things and to find things if you don't know you're looking for them?
You're absolutely right. I mean, so that's why I think it's been dripped out so long. It's because, we get something here, we say, well, that leads to a few more questions. They drip something out for us, and it's time to say enough's enough.
Okay, in the Politico article talking about this plan to potentially try to do this end-run resolution, they say this: the Justice Department has emphasized that it has made unprecedented disclosures of sensitive materials to lawmakers, even at times bypassing the historical guardrails for sharing information connected to an ongoing investigation. True or false?
Well, I'm not sure if it's true or false, but I know it's something that they're spinning to say, well, see, we've been just perfectly compliant. Well, then where are the rest of the documents? If you're going to go over the guardrails that you say you are, why not give us all the documents then? Why not let us see them? And if we need to go to a top secret room, let us go there, and we'll look at them there. And it's just not happening.
Do you think they're validly worried about leaks from either side? Because there have been accusations that both Democrats and Republicans have leaked things that are beneficial to their side of the argument.
I think in Washington, D.C., everyone should always be concerned about leaks. I mean, that's something you have to live with.
All day, every day.
Yeah, but I mean, look, we find that there's additional witnesses from time to time that we need to talk to, and it's all because it's been dripped out, and they haven't provided us with the information necessary for us to conduct our oversight investigation. That's a real problem.
Well, I know Republicans, a number of them are worried that Democrats will retake the House in the fall, and all of this comes to a screeching halt, and you won't be able to get much more information, if any, beyond that point. We will see how this meeting goes tomorrow.
All right.
Congressman, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, stick around for Senator John Kennedy's Fox News at Night debut. Fresh off a meet and greet with Supreme Court nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh, Senator Kennedy is sounding off on the White House proposal to revoke security clearances for some of the top intel officials of the past decade.
I haven't determined yet whether you can or should revoke somebody's security clearance from being a butthead.
That's a technical term. Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana joins us next with an interesting take on his Senate colleagues. Democrats have so far refused to meet with Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, though a couple meetings are in the planning phase. He was tapped by President Trump to replace retiring Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. Lawmakers on the left are demanding the release of a trove of documents relating to Kavanaugh's past White House service under President Bush. One senator who did meet today with the nominee, John Kennedy of Louisiana, member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, joins us now. Senator, great to have you with us.
It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
What was your impression of the meeting today?
I like Judge Kavanaugh. I mean, I knew going in that he's a superior intellect. I've read, not through, but I've read enough of his opinions and his law review articles to know he's whip smart. But I wanted to use the time we had together to try to understand not just what's in his head, but what's in his heart. We talked a little about the law, but mostly we asked him how his beautiful daughters were handling all this. We talked a little bit about his teaching. I used to teach a little bit in law school, and how you juggle that with your day job. We talked about his coaching. He coaches girls basketball. We talked about Pete Maravich's. I saw Pete Maravich's first game as a college freshman, and of course Judge Kavanaugh's a big fan. We talked on the legal side. I didn't want to cross-examine him. That wasn't the purpose of the meeting. Again, I just want to know what's in his heart. But I asked him the role of precedent in our legal system, and he's thought about it deeply, and I was impressed with his answer. Look, I really like what I see. I mean, the guy's whip smart, but I think he can also understand and identify with just ordinary people like me.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've seen you cross-examine nominees. It doesn't always end well for them, so we'll see how this one goes.
Well, that's my job. I mean, my job. Look, this appointment, we're appointing an unelected, the most powerful unelected position in a country that's the most powerful in all of human history. So this is a big deal. And it's for life. We've got to make sure that we get it right, and that's part of my job on judiciary. And I'm going to do my job. I mean, I'm going to ask tough questions, but I have a pretty strong suspicion he can handle it.
Well, okay. Senator Menendez, one of your colleagues from across the aisle, not a big fan, hasn't seen his full record, but here's what he says about him so far.
I think if the American people understand Judge Kavanaugh's record, they will rise up, and that will stop his nomination.
What do you think he's referring to?
Well, I've looked at his record. I'm still reading his opinions. He's written about 300. I've started with his law review articles. But as best I can tell, here's what Judge Kavanaugh believes. He believes that the role of a judge is to call the balls and the strikes, to interpret the law. Not to decide every other Thursday that you want to rewrite the Constitution to prosecute your own personal political agenda. I think he understands that sometimes judges make policy. It's inevitable when you decide a case. You're making policy for that case, and it's a precedent. But he understands that judges should not try to be ideologues and do what Congress is supposed to do. If you want to be an ideologue and prosecute a personal political agenda, run for Congress, run for president. Now, I think that's the proper role of a judge. I think that's what Judge Kavanaugh understands. My friend Senator Menendez would probably prefer, not to put words in his mouth, but I know him pretty well, he'd probably prefer to have a liberal activist put on the court who says, well, you know, the Constitution is important, but it's just a guiding principle, and here's where I think we ought to go on this issue. And that's not what our founders intended. That's just not what I'm rather fond of the Constitution. I think our founders did a hell of a job with the document, and we ought to follow it.
Okay. Well, a lot of folks feel that that's exactly what they should be doing.
And if you don't want to follow it, that's why we have an amendment process. But you have to do it through the democratic process. You just can't have somebody appointed go say, I know what's best for all Americans, and this is what I'm going to decree.
Is it true that you have served as a high school substitute teacher?
I serve as a substitute teacher. I've done it for, I don't know, since 2002. I did it once in high school. I do mostly junior high and elementary.
Wow.
Let me tell you why I do it. If you want to understand what elementary and secondary education is all about, go be a volunteer substitute. They'll even take politicians.
All right. Who is tougher to, because I feel like you don't have a very high tolerance level for BS. Who is tougher to corral, junior high students or U.S. senators?
U.S. senators. And let me tell you.
You didn't even hesitate on that.
Let me tell you, when you're a substitute, everybody ought to do it. It makes you appreciate what it means to be a teacher. It's you and 25 kids, so it's a challenge. But senators, look, I like all of my colleagues. On the Republican side, we're more entrepreneurial, politically entrepreneurial. The Democrats tend to move in lockstep. We're together almost all the time, but every now and then we have a couple of senators that kind of wander off like a free-range chicken. And that's their prerogative, but when you've only got 50 of you, it makes it tough sometimes on votes, but that's what makes it interesting.
Senator, we are glad to have you appear with us tonight on Fox News at Night. Come back anytime.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Well, it is a big primary election night in Georgia. President Trump once again choosing sides in a runoff election for the Republican candidate for governor. We'll have a live report with the full results. Plus, can the Republican winner beat progressive Democrat Stacey Abrams, who's looking to become the first woman and first African-American governor of Georgia? Conservative radio host Todd Starnes is here to weigh in. He joins us next. Also got a thing or two to say about a case in Georgia with echoes of Willie Horton. And is the Air Force cracking down on the Bible? We'll tell you the story. Stick around. This is a Fox News Alert results coming in tonight from a big runoff election in Georgia. Republican voters choosing a nominee for governor. And once again, the president is figuring heavily into the campaign. Jonathan Seri is live tonight in Athens. Good evening, Jonathan.
Good evening, Shannon. Brian Kemp says that President Trump's endorsement late on in this race was perhaps the most significant factor leading to his victory in this GOP runoff election. The victory was decisive, Kemp defeating Casey Cagle by roughly 70% to 30%. Kemp now hopes to unify his party as he goes into the general election campaign against Democrat Stacey Abrams.
Blood sport sometimes, and you have to get over it quickly, move on, because we got a big fight ahead of us. This will be a national race with Stacey Abrams.
In the Republican primary, Casey Cagle was the target of a secret recording. Both candidates faced a barrage of negative ads. But now that it's all over, Cagle is ready to rally support behind his party's nominee.
I congratulated him on a wonderful race and obviously a great victory. And I committed to him my full, undivided support to see that he will be our next governor of the state of Georgia. And I want each of you to do the same thing.
And coming back to our live location here at the Kemp Watch Party, you can see the candidate now posing for photos here. The crowd that remains clearly celebrating a decisive victory. In the name of unity, though, Kemp and Cagle plan to appear together on Thursday at a Republican unity rally, hoping to bring the Republican Party together in advance of the November general election. Shannon?
All right, Jonathan Seri live for us in Athens, Georgia tonight. Thank you. And from the Georgia governor's race to a case involving a Georgia judge, Todd Starnes has a lot to say about it. He joins us now. Todd, good evening to you. I know you've had these candidates on your radio show, and they have agreed that they're going to bind together, the GOP, and do what they have to win this race.
Well, that's right, Shannon. As a matter of fact, today on my radio program, I made both of them pinky swear they would endorse the other candidate should they lose. And, of course, we saw Casey Cagle do that. Look, this is going to be a very big deal in the state of Georgia as the Republicans take on this Democrat, Stacey Abrams, someone who is a progressive Democrat. People ask me, what's the difference between Abrams and Brian Kemp? Well, he's a gun-toting, Bible-clinging deplorable, and she's not, Shannon.
No, she's not, and she's made no secret of that. So this will be a very interesting race, potentially history in the making. But I want to talk to you about this other case in Georgia we've been following, where there was a young man, I believe he was about 14 years old, when he was arrested on armed robbery charges. He got a pretty hefty sentence. It was then sliced down a little bit. He served about 2.5 years, I understand, in a juvenile correction facility. The judge there said this. She said, "I think he has been in prison now for 2.5 years, and I don't think it helped him much. I haven't noticed a whole lot of change, and I'm hoping the change will occur with this opportunity." She was allowing him to go out into a program that was described as something that would very tightly control, almost a military school type environment, to give him a fresh start and skills to move on in life. Now he's been arrested for shooting, accused of felony murder, of killing a man who was waiting for an Uber to pick him up. And that's really not a good end result, and certainly not one you would imagine the judge would have expected. But she knew he had trouble.
Oh, she absolutely knew he was a troubled person, and yet completely ignored the passionate pleas of the district attorney and the prosecutors. This kid, 14 years old, he had been serving 28 months in juvie, had racked up something like 25 or 30 violations, I mean violent violations, and instead of being sentenced and serving out that 7-year sentence, Shannon, instead he was let go and he was allowed to enroll in a rehab center. But here's the news nugget, Shannon. There's no indication this rehab center actually existed. And as a result of that, this kid was out on the streets. The prosecutor had evidence this guy was involved in gangs, and yet the judge did nothing. The judge let him out, and what happened? This now 17-year-old thug shot and killed a man who happens to be a chef in the Washington, D.C. area. Also happens to be a new father, a 9-month-old baby. Yeah. Now this man is dead.
Yeah, it's a devastating case, and he's been charged. We're going to follow that trial. I know that there were concerns by the DA's office saying, we're seeing on Instagram and other social media that he's posing with guns and drugs and all kinds of other things. It wasn't enough to get him back behind bars. So we'll follow that case as it plays out. Meanwhile, you're also tracking this case of someone we all know well, if you follow these cases, Mikey Weinstein, who is after the military when it comes to religious things. He said, you know, these missing man tables, that if you're familiar with the military, you've been to events or different bases, you see this, where it's set for the person who is no longer missing because they are missing in action. They've been killed in action. They're not part of the family there anymore. And there's a Bible on the table at a number of these places at different bases around the country. He said no. He went to the military and said the Bible's got to go. It offends people, and he's succeeding.
Well, he is, and the most recent incident happened at Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. And folks need to understand this tradition was birthed out of the Vietnam War, and that Bible stands for something. It stands for a reminder that we are one nation under God. And so Mikey Weinstein with the Military Religious Freedom Foundation complained, and the base commander there actually decided to remove the Bible. And Shannon, what has really caused national outrage, and we've been talking about this on my radio show, is that the military commander replaced the Bible with a generic book of faith, and no one knows what exactly that is. But here's the problem with Mikey Weinstein. This is a guy who has a long history of attacking Christians in the military, and especially in the Pentagon. And during the Obama years, Shannon, he bragged that he had a hotline to the Pentagon. Well, quite frankly, what President Trump needs to do is disconnect that number.
Well, Mr. Weinstein has said that if the president gets involved in this at all, he'll be in court before he knows what to do about it. He also says that of the people he's representing, 21 of them are Protestants and Catholics. So he objects to the idea that he is anti-Christian or going after Christians in any way.
Well, that's a bunch of grade A fertilizer, Shannon. Look, I am a good church-going Baptist. I don't know any Christians who are offended by the Holy Bible. I'd like to meet one of those folks.
Well, the base commander there says it's all in an effort to make sure that no one's offended and everybody feels included. And the Book of Faith is the one that will be used now in rotation. He says he's done it on 8 bases and he's not done yet. So, Todd, we know you're going to track him. Let us know.
That's right.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, in a new poll, Democrats say they like the CIA, the FBI, even the IRS. But they don't like ICE. So if that doesn't surprise you, this might. The far left dislikes ICE so much that abolished ICE protesters in Portland took an effigy of President Trump to a guillotine. You're watching it with your own eyes. The clock's now ticking on these protesters facing a midnight eviction notice. We've got a live report as those tensions continue to rise.
What's the strongman?
It's a pea protein gluten-free pate.
It's a burrito filled with plants pretending to be meat.
Here we see the artist making an attempt to bare his soul.
It's just a great dot.
There are multiples on the table. One is cash, 3 are FHA, 1 is VA. So what can you do?
She's saying a whole lot of people want to buy this house. But you got this. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans makes the complex simple. Understand the details and get approved in as few as 8 minutes by America's largest mortgage lender.
I have a lot of hair, but it's thin.
I'm just a girl with thin hair, balding, and I'm not even that old.
My hair in the front, it's bald.
Now you can get full hair instantly with Topic Hair Building Fibers, the #1 instant solution for fine or thinning hair.
I have thinning hair and I'm only in my 30s. So I started using Topic. What a huge, huge change that was for me.
Nobody knows it's there but me. It just makes me really feel confident and beautiful.
I didn't expect that there would be something that would work so easily. I mean, it's literally puff, puff. It's covered.
Topic is made from the same pure keratin proteins as real hair. The hair-building fibers instantly bond and blend with your own hair to look instantly fuller, instantly thicker, and instantly younger. Choose from 9 shades to match virtually any hair color, and Topic resists wind, rain, and sweat, and stays in until you wash it out.
My husband loves my hair. When I put my Topic on, he says it looks gorgeous. So it makes me feel good.
I am so grateful for Topic.
It's just completely changed my life in the few months that I've used it.
And now you can have full hair instantly too. Go to gettopic.com or call now to get a 30-day supply of Topic for just $29.95. But that's not all. Through this special TV offer, we'll double Topic free to a full 60-day supply. That's twice the hair-building fibers for one low price of just $29.95. And shipping is free. You'll also get these hair-perfecting tools absolutely free. The spray applicator and hairline optimizer for a perfect line every time. All this in over $70 value for the amazing low price of only $29.95. Get full hair instantly or get your money back, and we'll even ship it to you free.
When I use Topic, I see the old me, and I feel like my hair that I had when I was in my 20s and my 30s is back.
This special offer is only available by calling or going to gettopic.com now.
Who would have thought? Who would have guessed? An energy company helping cars emit less. Making cars lighter. It's a good place to start. Advanced Oils. for those hard-working parts. Fuels that go further, so drivers pump less. Improving efficiency is what we do best. Energy lives here.
This is an invitation to dive into a world bursting with life, to run with it, move with it, to experience a place between dreams and reality. This is an invitation to laugh, play, dive into life. Are you ready to become a part of this? Atlantis, Bahamas at heart.
Book by July 31st to save up to 30% at 1-800-ATLANTIS or AtlantisBahamas.com.
Disband now. That is the message from officials in Portland, Oregon tonight, where protesters are facing a midnight deadline to leave their occupied encampment at a local immigration and customs enforcement facility. Garrett Tenney is tracking, and he's got the latest. I mean, the clock is ticking.
Yeah, things get interesting here in just a few hours because despite that deadline, some of these protesters say they are not going anywhere. Now, this protest in Portland has become one of the country's most visible of the Abolish ICE movement, and this makeshift camp next to an ICE office is complete with porta potties, furniture, and large wooden barricades. It has become home to a nonstop demonstration over the last 5 weeks, including several clashes with police. Portland's Democratic mayor has been an outspoken supporter of the protest, but on Monday he told them it was time to move on, explaining that a bike path was being blocked by the camp and that it was becoming a public safety issue, not to mention a growing source of complaints from folks who live nearby.
The timing is right here, and particularly with one faction or one group of people deciding to move on to the next phase of the protest. We think this is a good time. We've always said that the camp itself with its wooden structures isn't sustainable. It's been a fluid situation, and we think the timing is right.
Just last week, Portland's mayor got himself into a bit of hot water after suggesting officers should be focusing on criminal activity, not on the city's pervasive homeless population, which prompted the police union president to blast the mayor for throwing officers under the bus for his own failed policies.
I've been a police officer here for 27 years. I've seen it gone downhill. This city's become a cesspool. The main thing the mayor needs to stop doing is blaming other people for his failures.
Late Monday, police posted notices around the camp stating that anyone who sticks around past tonight's midnight deadline will face an arrest or citation. Today, some of the protesters responded by staging a mock execution of President Trump using a makeshift guillotine to chop the head off of a piñata, saying they have no plans to leave.
Come out here, make your stand, join us. We are going to be here. We are not going anywhere until the zero tolerance policy is lifted, until the last child is reunited with their parents, until not another local family is separated by ICE. That's what they do every day in this community.
And tonight, a majority of the protesters have packed up and headed home. There's only around a dozen or so who are refusing to leave. But all of those involved say even though this demonstration is over, their effort as a whole to get ICE abolished is just getting started.
Well, they have some folks who are willing to help them here in Washington and others who are not. So we'll see how it goes on the West Coast. Garrett, thank you.
You got it.
All right, a new survey out tonight from Pew showing stark divides along party lines when it comes to opinions about certain government agencies. Nearly 8 in 10 conservative Republicans view ICE favorably. About the same percentage of liberal Democrats view ICE unfavorably, 82%. On the flip side, 2/3 of Democrats view the IRS favorably. Nearly half of Republicans feel the same way. The newest numbers represent significant changes since the Obama era. Let's talk about it with tonight's panel. Richard Fowler, syndicated radio host and Fox News contributor, along with Fox News political analyst Gianno Caldwell. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Good to be here, Shannon.
Thank you for having us.
Richard, the IRS. Dems love it now? What's that all about?
Listen, as long as you make sure you get my refund on time, I guess you like it. But here's a larger, I think what this poll sort of speaks to is the one thing I found to be remarkable is that I think both parties are angry about the same things and they just haven't realized it yet. Both parties are arguing for more accountability and more transparency. On the left, they're saying that ICE is unaccountable and they're untransparent and they're engaging in bad behavior when it comes to separating kids from their families at the border. On the right, they're arguing for more transparency and more accountability when it comes to the FBI and how they're handling Donald Trump. For decades, activists in the African American community and the Latino community have been asking for accountability from law enforcement. So it seems as though we've been having this debate about accountability from law enforcement for decades on both sides of the aisle, no matter what color you are.
All right, so Gianna, to that IRS issue, obviously I think there's a lot of lingering resentment from folks over the last several years and feeling like conservative groups were targeted by them. And there are still ongoing, disputes over this. There was a lot of litigation about people just trying to simply get answers about what happened to their applications and whether or not they were targeted based on the words in their application.
Yeah, we know that they were targeted. We did remember those hearings on Capitol Hill. That was a known factor, certainly. And now we have a different issue here. And I think Democrats, which we've seen this across the country, they've clearly done the math. And they know that there's 58 million Hispanics and counting. They realize that the Hispanic community is now the largest minority group, which tells us why they have such a myopic view of ICE, in my opinion. They see the Hispanic community as their only way to regain power. And here's the problem with that strategy from my point of view. Advocating for open borders, sanctuary cities, and providing undocumented immigrants the right to vote will only embolden Trump supporters, Republicans, legal immigrants, and people who believe in law and order to vote for Republicans in November. To me, it's particularly problematic because you're saying, hey, let's abolish an agency that's really here to protect us. It's just like me going on the south side of Chicago and saying, no, I don't want any police in my community. No, they're here to prevent from me possibly being harmed. So I find this to be like just such a view that's so draconian to any measure of moving our country forward. It's just meant to divide us more.
Well, and Richard, let me ask you, though, about this issue with ICE, because there are a lot of warnings for Democrats within the party saying, like, ixnay on the getting rid of ICE talk, nay, because, listen, it worries them that it's going to seem too radical to people. And when you have people pulling out an effigy of the president, regardless of who the president is, and putting their head in a guillotine, do you not worry as a Democrat that that may embolden and even drive more supporters to the president, because it seems to a lot of people controversial at best?
Look, we're 100 days out from the midterm election, and at 2010, which is the most similar election to this one, we saw the same behavior from the right. There were pictures of depicting Barack Obama as Hitler. So I think you're going to have people. Getting his head chopped off? The point I'm making here is that you're going to see the sides polarized as you get closer and closer to election. I'm not on either of those sides. And I want to push back on one point that Giano made about open borders. I'm not a Democrat that believes in open borders. I believe we should protect our borders. But I think the problem that people have with ICE, the Democrats, and I think beyond Democrats, independents for that matter, and I think most Americans, when you see what's happening on our southern border, where 3,000 young people tonight are still not with their parents, and ICE has no answers. And that's why this poll...
That story and more in our Real News Roundup next. Time now for your Real News Roundup. High school students interrupted a speech by Attorney General Jeff Sessions with chants of "lock her up," apparently in reference to Hillary Clinton. Well, multiple media outlets suggested Sessions joined in the chants, and dozens of pundits taking digs at him for even repeating the line and laughing at the clip. Well, we'll show you the clip.
Lock her up. So, I heard that a long time over the last campaign.
Yes, he did. All right, media stars are touting the benefits of socialism amid the sharp swerve to the left by the Democratic Party. Joy Behar on The View naming various nations that have normalized socialism, while co-host Meghan McCain pushing back on the idea that it's worked anywhere.
If you think it's good, then you need to be paying the amount of taxes that in socialistic countries.
Let her get her thing and go ahead.
Because it's petrifying to me that this is being normalized.
All right.
All right. Utah Senator Orrin Hatch clearing up a little bit of a misunderstanding after a Google search result listed him as being dead since last year. Hatch tweeted, "Hi, Google. We might need to talk." The senator making sure everyone knows he's still here by posting this proof of life.
The reports of my demise have been greatly exaggerated.
All right, tonight's hero, Officer Tony Carlson of the Tallahassee Police Department. He saw a homeless man named Phil. He told the officer if he showed up clean-shaven, he'd been promised a job at a nearby McDonald's. He didn't have a mirror and his razor was broken, so the officer fixed the broken razor and then helped give him a shave. A woman passing by saw the encounter and recorded it. And for going above and beyond the call of duty from my hometown, we salute Tallahassee Police Officer Carlson. Most watched, most trusted, most grateful you spent your evening with us. Good night from Washington. I'm Shannon Breen.